Councillor. I mean, our vision for this complex would be that this would be for the screen and digital sector what Wynyard Quarter is for the ICT sector. So we'd be looking to, and I think what's been interesting from the process is that already we have a balance of demand of existing local players, some of whom spoke at the last workshop, of the international players, of local universities, as I mentioned, but also local startup companies that are interested in being based on site. So as Grid AKL is for the ICT sector, our expectation is that this would be the same for the screen and digital sector, most of which today actually is based in the west, around the existing Auckland Film Studios site, Studio West site and the South Pacific Pictures site, and obviously the smaller businesses that work with them.
My next question is just in regards to the New Zealand Film Commission and the China market and the notion of government support for a film precinct such as this. What's your understanding around the signals that have been sent via central government networks around the Chinese film market and possibilities for the future?
Thank you, Councillor. I mean, there is a recognition within New Zealand that we are short of facilities, and just in the last 12 months we've turned away $160 million worth of productions from Auckland because we simply didn't have the space. Obviously some of that was exacerbated by the fire at Auckland Film Studios last year. The Film Commission's big focus, obviously there's a significant amount of business that we continue to get from the United States, but the Film Commission's big focus is on the China market. New Zealand's the only country in the world that has a television co-production agreement with China, and we're one of the few countries that has a film co-production agreement as well. So the Film Commission's focus is very much on driving that China business, and those productions would come to Auckland. So they're keen to see us have the facilities available to meet that expected demand. And what we know from China is that they have a voracious appetite for developing their own content that's been mandated by President Xi Jinping. But today they have both the shortage of skilled staff, and we know some of the players that we'll be talking to are interested in the training and education element of a studio complex like this, and they also have the need for people to help them develop their content. And so as part of our free trade agreement with them and the co-production agreements, New Zealand and Auckland is a logical place for them to start.
And I might just sneak one more in if I may, Madam Chair. Comments around why area in the Norska area can't be utilised for a film precinct. That's a question that's being raised and will continue to get raised. So can you expand on why not?
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, we used, in conjunction with Auckland Film Studios, experts from the United States to look at different sites, and one of the advantages of the Hobsonville site is the ferry connectivity to the CBD and the proximity to the CBD and the nature of the site. This is a globally competitive business, so people have a choice about where they want to go. So, and obviously the nature of the site, the proximity to the water, the locations there make it advantageous. One of the challenges with the Norska site is the proximity to the motorway. So obviously background noise and any ground vibrations are an issue for any operator. That's been one of our challenges historically at the Henderson site because of the proximity to the rail line, and that has been a factor in the past in some production companies not wanting to go to Henderson because of that factor. So I'm not an expert on the engineering involved, but I know that anything that's in proximity to a rail line or a motorway like that is likely to be represent a compromise for these productions. And as I say, particularly the overseas ones, they have a choice to go anywhere.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Crown. Councillor Casey.
A few questions for David. David, could you put up the pretty pictures of the WASP development and the local retail centre that we saw at the workshop? I want to jump back to that one after that. Just while it's going up, can you just talk about what we heard this morning from the residents and what we heard from the local board as the importance of meeting community needs in a neighbourhood centre and a local retail centre? Could you discuss how that's being met through your proposal?
What's proposed for the WASP building, which is deemed to have particular architectural character, whatever attributes, is that the ACPL proposal will be to invest in that building, retaining its heritage features. Someone got the... Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, using the, obviously the bones and architectural components of the current building to kind of make it fit for current modern commercial use. And that would be viable as part of the overall development project. As things stand in our business case, that would be for commercial users. We would see probably higher end commercial activities going in. There'd be obviously pretty sort of funky environment.
Did you say funky?
Yeah.
Funky.
In terms of the local board's request, as I said at the workshop, that's really a matter for you as shareholder to determine, because I mean, obviously the opportunity's there in the sense the structure is there, but it would be up to the council to decide that's where it wanted to fund a new community facility.
And just while I've got you, and then I'm going back to Brett, but can you talk about the number of houses that will be built in your proposal, and the 15% of that will be affordable? Can you just give us the numbers on that again for the benefit of my colleagues?
Yeah, I think the number's 441, which includes apartment component, which is assumed on both the options. And yes, a minimum of 10% would be affordable, with 5% what we've called innovative design, which keeps them obviously gives people the ability to get in at a reasonably good price and then be able to add to them later.
Thanks very much. And then if we can just go back to the Stalag picture that Brett had up, one of the comments that Lisa made was that it kind of, and also Gavin this morning also said that he was worried about the lack of connectivity if you stick this big Stalag fence thing in the middle. Can you just talk to that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I think from some of the concepts that we've seen in other locations, the studio operator accepts that they are part of the local community. So they construct facilities that can be shared with the local community. So, for example, that can include, you know, restaurants and facilities that are used by both the studio complex and by the local community. That can include recreation centres that are used by, you know, and gyms that are used by the studio itself and by the local community. So that comes down to, I think, the specifications that we would propose that we put into this process. That clearly, if there are community utilisation or facility options that we would like a developer to include, like any other development, we would include that as part of our criteria for their investment. And so I think, particularly because of the prospect of having a significant student community there as part of this complex, then that, you know, that student community would require the same sort of facilities and amenities that the local community would want. And obviously having a large working population there during the day will improve the profitability of any operator who wants to move into that area. So they're not just relying on the local residents, they also have a large local workforce they can be using those facilities as well. So I think the goals can be complementary, and I think it would be sensible to include that as part of our criteria for an investment.
And using your model, how many houses and what percentage affordable?
I haven't got those figures
Okay.
available. That's probably best addressed to David.
What's the number for the half one?
320, 330, I think, from
It's
memory.
in here.
Yeah. 315.
Councillor Anai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brett, for the last 5 years, we've been talking about identifying an area for film studios in Auckland. And I know we're running out of space, the space we need. Maybe you could just help us by telling us, one, what type of land we're looking for, size of it, the needs, the distance from the city for it to be for a start, please.
Sure. Thank you, councillor. The requirement is for a flat space, ideally and the report that was conducted, that was commissioned, identified flat space, close proximity to the central city, because a number of particularly on the international productions, but maybe some of the local ones as well, there'll be a significant number of people travelling there to and from there each day from the CBD. So the local ferry service that between Hobsonville Point and the CBD obviously creates a good opportunity for those people to come to and from work every day, along with some of the other public transport options there. The location next to character buildings, obviously, which could be incorporated into some of the productions, is desirable. Its proximity to the motorway network, so people are able to get to and from. Another factor is the proximity to local trades and things like hardware, lumber. Obviously, on these sites there's actually a significant amount of building activity going on. Yep. So the proximity to Westgate and the various suppliers that are located in that area was considered to be advantageous. And I guess finally the proximity to the existing local workforce. So the bulk of people who work in the sector work in the west, and so this would, and a number of those people currently have to travel from the west to productions which are having to be housed in warehouses in places like Penrose, Mount Wellington. So instead of those people travelling daily to those sites, they'll be able to I guess, travel shorter distances to Hobsonville Point.
We have a number of institutes in Auckland with performing arts linked to them. Presumably they'll be able to link to this when this is all in place?
Yes, through the chair, we've had discussions with AUT and Unitec, both of whom have film schools and have indicated their interest in moving to this precinct, assuming that a successful investment is approved, and we think there'll be a number of other organisations that will choose to be here, so you get that same sort of clustering effect as we're seeing at Wynyard Quarter with Grid AKL.
And just the last question, Madam Chair. Will this land holding be held by one umbrella company to make it work? And secondly, if they don't go ahead with it in any way, this should come back to the council, the land itself.
In response to your first part of that question, I think that at the moment we have 16 parties that have indicated an interest in this concept, and so it's probably too early to say whether a single one of those will be successful, but certainly there's some very serious investors there. So I think it's highly likely, and I think that the proposal that will go to investors with to gauge your interest before the 31st of October and firm that up would be around a single owner developing the site. I think caveats around what happens to the land if they don't go ahead would be subject to that, would be part of that process.
Yeah, and I asked that question because we need to protect ourselves, Madam Chair, of what happened out of the Vodafone site. We'd sold it with the intent of going into sleepyhead, and the 400 jobs were supposed to be there, and then it's gone to something else. So when that happens, it should come back to us to be in control. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, councillor Anai. Councillor Webster?
Well, actually, as I was putting my hand up, Brett answered my question about the ferry. The other issue is there good broadband here, Brett? Because, you know, film industry needs sort of good broadband facilities.
Yes, I'm sure there's fibre there today, so companies would be able to access that.
Okay, the other thing is that, and not just the Vodafone site, we had the same thing happen at Gulf Harbour. If it does go to one ownership, is there an ability to append what Hobsonville Land Company are trying to achieve with their development, so that we don't get if it does not go ahead, but the ownership, if the land is in one ownership, that they can build the sorts of things that we're trying to achieve out there? I'm probably not making sense, but I sort of know what I mean.
Have another go, councillor Webster.
Well, it's just that, I mean, the thing is that the risk is that what happens if you've got a concept where there's a plan at the moment for the Hobsonville Land Company, they're building a certain type of housing in a certain way. What happened out at Gulf Harbour is the original landowner had that land and started to build to a concept plan, and then sold bits of land off, and it just became a mishmash of what then was nothing like the concept of what they're trying to build out there. So if we went ahead with the film industry, if then the film industry decided to pull out, is there some way that we can control what goes onto that land?
In response to the chair, I think that again would be part of the developing an investment proposal and the caveats that would be placed on that investor and on the way we would expect them to develop the site.
Right, thank you.
Well, I guess it's fair to say, and I think Chris may back me up, we've gone through several iterations of various parts of the HLC land, and it has proved able to be adaptable. We don't want to keep putting Hobsonville Land Company through more and more and more iterations, but one would hope that if this did fall through, there were other ways of utilising this extraordinarily valuable land.
Yep.
Okay, councillor Clow, you're